Welcome to our virtual engineering open house. Today we are having our bioengineering faculty panel. My name is Luz Sandoval Manjarres. I'm an academic advisor in the School of Engineering. This is one event of a series of events to help welcome second-year undergraduate students into the School of Engineering. During the first year, students see their Bobcat advisor in the Bobcat Advising Center. And then at the completion of the first year, students then transition to their declared major advisors. We do hope that you can join us in our coming events this week and the following week. This event will be recorded and it will be posted on our engineering advising website, so you can refer back to it. We will have time for Q&A. If you have questions throughout the panel, feel free to post your questions in the Q&A, and then we will have time to answer them. And today we're having two faculty panelists, Professor Victor Munoz and Professor Eva de Alba. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be facilitating this event and we'll ask each of you some questions. So if we can go ahead and start. Professor Munoz, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what did you decide to come teach at UC Merced?
Yeah, hi everybody. Yes, my name is Victor Munoz. I'm a professor in bioengineering. I have been at UC Merced since 2014. Before that, I was a professor in Spain. And before that, I was a professor at the University of Maryland and the other side of this country, on this coast. And before that, I did a postdoc at the National Institutes of Health and a PhD in Germany. So I've been moving around quite a bit. So from the point of view of why choosing UC Merced, so at that point in my life, I wanted to go back to the US and experience the academic life in the US again. So there were a couple of factors that were decisive for me to come to UC Merced. The first one is I was very interested about a new project. You know, the University of California has this reputation, and this was a new campus. I didn't know anything about it at the time. I thought it was very exciting to be part of it. And there was also a practical reason, which is at that time, which we're still in the midst of the big recession, there were not so many universities hiring. So there's a combination of the two factors that actually made it for me to come here.
Thank you. And if we can have also Professor de Alba.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Eva de Alba and I am an associate professor in the Department of Bioengineering. I came to UC Merced after working for a long time in the National Research Council in Spain, in Madrid. Before that, I worked for about 9 years in the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. And I joined UC Merced quite recently in September of 2017. So my laboratory, my group has been launched since then. And the main interest that I always had in UC Merced is because it's part of the University of California, and you know, everybody is aware of the reputation of the university at the international and national levels, but also the fact that it's a new campus, or it's the newer campus, and this opens so many possibilities to have meaningful impact in everything that we do from any perspective that we can think of, whether from a student's perspective or staff, faculty, everything. Things that are currently developing, what we do has this important meaning that we're going to do something with a lot of impact, and that for me it's very attractive. I also like the fact that there is very small student to faculty ratio, so we have a lot of contact with the students. As faculty and instructors, the classes are, not all of them, I understand, but many classes, and particularly in bioengineering, are small. The number of students is a small number, so that allows for a lot of contact between students and faculty, and I think this contributes a lot to the success of the students and to the growth of a faculty as teachers, and to be excellent teachers, because we know firsthand from the students what's going on and what are the struggles they might have, what are their goals, etc.
Yeah, well, we thank you both for joining us from so far away here at UC Merced and coming and helping our students. So our next question is, could you tell us more about bioengineering, what it is, and then what it is here at UC Merced, and what do students learn here at UC Merced?
Yeah, okay, so I'll give you my take. So, bioengineering, the name says it all in a way. It's about engineering practice on biological systems. And biological systems means either you engineering the biological systems themselves or developing tools to study or to control or manipulate biological systems. So both aspects of the problem, right? And it's a really thriving area, and it's growing everywhere. It is also practically of great importance because it's connected to medicine in a way, and pharmacy is also connected with research, and is connected with the environment and remediation issues, and it's connected with agriculture, and it's connected with water resources, with almost anything that you can imagine that is a contribution of a biological agent or a biological product. That's what bioengineering has a role. That is in general. So that also means it's fairly heterogeneous. We do lots of many different things, and people can call themselves bioengineers coming from very different areas, both from the point of view of your own training, and also from the point of view of your research or your area of expertise, right? So that is in general. So, it includes, just give me a few examples. So to be a bit more clear, one typical area of bioengineering is people developing methods and instruments for enabling diagnostics, for enabling research in biology or in biomedicine. Also developing prosthetics. That's also, your implants for teeth. They are actually bioengineering products. The same thing happens when somebody, especially old age, break a hip and they need a replacement, right? Hip replacement. That prosthetics has been developed by bioengineers. Those are kind of the more traditional areas, US, or the first ones. There is a lot of bioengineering that has to do with biotechnology, biopharmaceutical companies, the development of new drugs, the development of new treatments, the development of new diagnostic tools, the development of new procedures, medical procedures as well. And then there is obviously a lot of things that have to do with bioremediation, and there is connections there with other areas. But lots of these bioremediation procedures have to do with manipulation of microorganisms or manipulation of biomolecules. And that's part of bioengineering as well. And the same thing applies for agriculture, right? Almost every crop that you see being used in the world right now is being bioengineered one way or another, whether it's being by selection through the years, or it's being by genetic manipulation, or it's being by improvement of one kind of another. And, so all those areas, and I'm probably missing more, but basically it contains what people tend to discuss due to health, green biotechnology, which has to do with agriculture and environment, and then white biotechnology, which has to do with industry. There is a lot of chemical processing that is now done with biomolecules, and it's biomolecular processing that has to do as well, and that's another important area. And I guess I will let you say something about it. Sorry, I went too long.
Okay, yeah, this was a very detailed description of the broad applications that studying bioengineering has. I would like to emphasize in this multidisciplinarity that is inherent to the bioengineering field. So it's not only it is of course mainly the combination of the disciplines of engineering and biology, but because of the potential applications that Professor Munoz just described, as other engineering fields, it combines chemistry, math, physics, and in addition, students have to also be very proficient in biology and of course in all topics related to engineering. I think just to add perhaps a different perspective for students, in my experience as faculty in the bioengineering department, I have been in contact with quite a significant number of students who are interested in applying to medical school. I think that studying bioengineering is a great way to distinguish themselves from other students who want to go to medical school, like for example, from the biology major, because they definitely will have all those engineering and mathematical skills that perhaps are missing in other majors. So that's, I think, a good way to improve success in applying to medical school. One of the questions is, what are our students in this particular program, what are they going to learn? And again, I have to emphasize in the diversity of different topics that are inherent to any bioengineering program. And one particularity of ours is that we have these two groups of faculty who are doing research in different areas. One is more into the bioinstrumentation area, and another one is more into something that Professor Munoz commented, which is biomolecular engineering. And it's very much related to biotechnological applications. I think that for the location of UC Merced, so close to the Bay Area, which is a hub for biotechnology and bioengineering in general, it's a very good opportunity for students once they finish with their degree or they want to perhaps pursue a master's, etc., that they might have very good chances of getting a job in the biotech and bioengineering industry that is so close to us. And I think that's a little bit additional information to what Professor Munoz already added, which was very detailed already.
Thank you both so much for those really well explained. Our next question is, what are some good academic behaviors to be successful in engineering or your BioE courses? And then can you also talk about the classes that you teach? And if we can have Professor Munoz.
Yeah, okay. So I'll try not to be too extended. So yeah, I mean, basically the skills that one needs, organizational skills and also studying skills that one needs to be successful in engineering are basically combination of analytical thinking, quantitative skills, make sure that you are able to calculate problems, express and process problems in terms of models and equations and be able to solve them. And then obviously it's becoming more and more useful to have a certain degree of experience, or at least not being afraid of computational tools. Modeling is becoming more and more important. And we actually use it in courses, not only to teach people to code, but also in the context of bioengineering in particular in our case, but also from the point of view of how to apply basic computational methods to solve problems in bioengineering. So the combination of computational skills, analytical skills, quantitative skills, and of course, also from an engineering point of view, thinking about everything from the point of view of design. Okay, how can you use this knowledge to actually design something new, or to modify or improve something? Especially if you have some of them that you are stronger than others, it's always a good idea to try to emphasize those that you feel a little bit weaker in the beginning, early on, like where you are right now in the second year is the ideal time to actually do that. And sometimes even complement classes with some other things that actually will reinforce things that you need for the future in the program. And I guess I need to talk a little bit about classes that I teach, right? Okay, so I will just briefly say, I'm going to talk about the graduate classes, obviously for you, because they are far away in your scope. But for undergraduate, the class that I'm teaching right now is called Biomolecular Engineering. It's actually a class in the senior year. So if you become bioengineering students, you will get there on the final year. It's a class that is basically kind of distilling many of the ideas that have to do with using biomolecular systems, including proteins, nucleic acids, and things like that, for engineering design applications. The class kind of compiles a lot of information from before, puts it together, and makes it practical so you can see what the applications finally are. It's a really good entry point for anybody interested in a biotechnology career. So you want to work in a biotech company. This is one of the big things they will be looking for. The format of the class is a combination of lectures, computer labs. So basically every week we have a computer lab in which we explore the concepts from class from the point of view of design and engineering, and looking at them quantitatively. So you can actually play around in silico in the computer, but play around with the system so you can see how to modify them. And of course, we also have discussion sessions in which students have the opportunity to delve into the concepts together with a TA, a teaching assistant, who is a graduate student in the program.
Okay, I think then I guess I will also provide my perspective about this. So I think I can share, for example, what I did when I was a student. And I remember to be very strict with myself. Every day I would try to follow what I was taught during lectures, that I would not let doubts accumulate. Like if I wasn't sure that I understood properly or not a particular concept, topic, etc., I would either contact the professor or look wherever I could, books, or any information that would help me to be sure that I was understanding everything, all these concepts. Because one thing that I have found that happens to some students is that they have a false perception that they have understood these concepts properly, and then they find out that they are accumulating these doubts because they did not fully 100% understood some certain concepts. So I would be, if I were a student again, like very aware of, okay, do I really understand this or not? And if not, I just a small doubt, let's contact the professor, make sure that I get this right. That's one of the best, I guess one of the best advices that I could give for a student to be successful. And also like be very strict with oneself in following, like in a everyday work, not just, okay, I'm just gonna let this stay there in my computer or in my notebook, etc., until the end of the week, and I will deal with it during the weekend. That's not a good idea. It's really much better to every day do this amount of work that you need to make sure that you have settled down in your brain, in your memory, the new concepts that you were taught during lecture. So I'm going to talk about the classes. No? So I'm teaching biochemistry for engineers as an undergraduate course. And I'm teaching imaging and spectroscopic techniques as a graduate course. The undergraduate course, it's very quantitative. I'm saying this as one of the characteristics because some students commented to me in the past that they thought they just, because of the name biochemistry, that they had to like memorize lots of things, etc. And that is not the case. Yes, like in every other discipline, one needs to learn new things, but because this biochemistry course is for engineers, I try to make things very quantitative, and there is a lot of calculations that need to be done. That doesn't mean that the math involved is complicated. It's not. It is not. But students must have some concepts very, very clear in order to be able to solve the problems. For example, no? Another aspect that is important about biochemistry for engineers is that it is an upper division course. It requires a lot of concepts from chemistry and biology, because it's the combination of both. I try to be demanding in this course because it's the foundation for the course that Professor Muñoz is teaching. It's very important to be successful in biochemistry for engineers to be able to fully, let's say, use or benefit from the course that Professor Muñoz is teaching. In my course, I also connect a lot of physiology concepts that are related or that are based at the molecular level, at the biochemistry level. And human physiology is very important for bioengineers, and having these physiology concepts taught at the molecular level, I think it's also the foundation for some of what is taught in physiology for engineers, which is another course in the program. And yeah, I think that's most of what I wanted to comment.
Thank you. And you have already talked about how students can be successful. So I will move on to the next question, which is, what advice would you give students that are doing well, that are doing well in your classes? And what would you tell students that might not be doing too well academically? What advice would you give those two student populations?
Okay, so students that are doing well, obviously the first thing is to keep it up since things are going well. But of course, I think if you are doing well, you're enjoying the major, I think it's probably the time for you to start exploring possibilities. So you may want to contact faculty around so you can try to find research opportunities in campus. Also look for possible summer research opportunities that are fellowships to go some different places in the country around. We also have some at UC Merced, part of the Center for Cellular and Biomolecular Machines, which is one center that I'm director of. But you know, it's a campus-wide opportunity. And at the same time, I will also recommend that you try to expand your horizons and look beyond, right? Okay, and start reading and looking for things that you would like to do in the future, or what are areas you find more interesting. Because you're already doing well academically, it's the time to really strengthen your base and be able to give you a broader perspective. In addition to find research opportunities, which will give, you know, that's another question, so I will leave it for later. But, you know, if you are struggling, I mean, the advice here obviously is keep it up as well. Keep trying, contact your advisors on the one side, and at the same time, your professors in your classes, ask them for advice on how to study better, what kind of things they think you need to improve on. And basically, don't give up. I think things get easier as they go. You know, majors are designed in a way that it goes more or less in a slope up, so that, you know, you keep to some degree seeing things that you have seen before. They become more complete and so on. So even if you missed on stuff early on, you can pick it up later. And you will also see that progressively as you go on, you keep working and you make an effort to study every day, as Professor De Alba was saying before. That's very important. You know, you will eventually do better. You have to understand that, you know, this type of degrees, like any engineering degree or any kind of STEM degree in particular, so science, technology, and engineering, you know, there are degrees that require quite a lot of work at home. It's not enough to just listen to the lectures and then study 2 days before the exam. You know, that's not a good idea in general, but I think in these fields, it's all about practice. It's same thing that when somebody is going to the gym, you start working out. You know, the first days you don't do well, you get tired very quickly, then you're sore for a week. But you keep working hard, it gets easier, you get better, you know, muscles grow up. You know, your brain is also muscle. You have to, you know, you have to work it out. And the way to do this is actually making sure that you follow through, that you do all the homework, but at the same time that you expand from that and try to understand more, go beyond, right? And, you know, rely on asking your instructors, your professors, for whatever question you have. I mean, we all love to get students that are coming with interesting questions, or, you know, that are excited and motivated and they want to learn more. And, you know, we love to help you on that. And at the same time, we are also trying to be very responsible with those who are struggling. And, you know, we all gone through some of that at some point in our lives. So, you know, I think we can help. So don't be shy.
So on my end, I think that, for example, I just start very early on in the course that I'm teaching, an undergraduate course, to have some quizzes, like perhaps 2 weeks after we have started. And I do that to, you know, make sure that students are, you know, understanding all the topics that or concepts that we're discussing, etc. So very early on, I already start to figure out students that might be struggling and students that are just doing fine and others that are still finding their way. And I wait until the second quiz, and if, you know, the same student is still, based on the result of the test or the quiz, is still struggling, I actually contact them directly. They appreciate that, and it's a way for me to know what the problem it could be, what the problem is, whether it is because they're struggling with chemistry concepts, they're struggling with other types of things, the math, etc. I don't know. So that's a way to find out. So that's one way for me to approach the students that are not doing that well versus other students that are doing better. For students that are not struggling and just doing things fine, I have had the students asking questions about where it would be good to do research, which lab, whether to do research in Merced, in UC Merced, or perhaps in the summer going different places, etc. So that's something, for example, that I would suggest to all students, the ones that initially might be struggling and the ones that are doing well, if they are interested in learning in depth during the summer or during the academic year in our labs. It is, I would always recommend this. And I have had traditionally, although I have not been here for that many years, but since I started my lab, I started with undergraduate students from the bioengineering program, and they have done really well in my lab. And I think they have benefited significantly from the experience and the training that they got in getting jobs later when they finish. So that's always an advice that I would give them to all students, and also perhaps participating in professional conferences and seminars, because this, in addition to broaden their scope in terms of the bioengineering field, they can also do networking, which is very important. There are companies that typically are present during these professional conferences, etc. And the student could very well get into contact with, you know, representatives of different companies that are interested in hiring future bioengineers. So that's another advice that I would give them. And in any case, always not be reluctant at all to contact a faculty, not to hesitate, because I know some students might be kind of shy in doing that or something like that. And I don't think we are here for them. We are here to answer their questions. And that's part of our responsibility, and we should do it well. So they should, you know, feel perfectly comfortable to knock at the door or send an email and contact us to, you know, comment whatever problem they might be having during the course, or whether they have ideas of what they would like to do in the future, or they're just lost and want to know about different things, etc. So that's another advice, to always ask and get information, and not just keep with your doubt forever.
Thank you. And I know you both talked about internships and research. Could you explain how would students benefit from research or from internships? And how should students decide if they should do an internship or they should seek for research opportunities?
Okay, so there the decision is fairly clear whether you are thinking about a professional career in a company, working as an engineer. Probably what makes most sense is to actually try to do internships, and you know, within your major, maybe a couple of them, so you can try different areas and so on. And of course, this depends on contacts and things of that sort, but that's probably the most relevant thing. I think that every student in engineering should also try research at some point, because you never know what you're going to encounter. You may find a calling for academics by doing that. Or alternatively, there is a lot of companies, especially in the bioengineering field, that are very research and development oriented. And obviously, the research experience that you will get in the academic world will be also be helpful to actually find a job later on in the industry that is more research and development. Depends on the kind of job that you're looking for as well. So I think research is always something that everybody should try, at least for a little bit. We have plenty of opportunities, as Yusema said. You know, you can do research by basically taking credits, and you know, all the bioengineering faculty have right now or have had recently undergraduate students from the bioengineering major having, you know, doing research for academic credit. There are also fellowships. You know, the center I mentioned has fellowships. There are other fellowships around, and you also can actually get research experience going somewhere else, applying for one of these fellowships that are called REUs. So it's a research experience for undergraduates, and that those there are different that are offered, and they give you opportunities to go anywhere in the country depending on, you know, what you apply for. So I think both are useful. They have a slightly different goals. I think from the point of view of bioengineering, if you want to get a job in industry that is involved in RD, it's very important to have research experience during your undergraduate, because that will make the distinction when somebody's trying to hire you, whether, you know, you're going to hire somebody that has already experience in a similar area doing research or not.
Yeah, I don't think I can add much more information into what Professor Munoz said. Perhaps on the practical side of things, for an undergraduate student, engaging into research during the academic year, just by contacting faculty in the bioengineering program, it's possible. And then they could, I guess, use the summer for an internship. So both things, they could achieve both things instead of one versus the other. Perhaps not in the same year, perhaps they could alternate. So they could have that dual experience that would, you know, open or allow them to get training in what it means to be in doing research in a laboratory, and what it means to do an internship, whether it's also related to research in a company, in an industry, that could, you know, help a lot for networking and also to build a nice resume with experience, etc. So perhaps it's not so much one thing versus the other, but how could I do both things and program for that and be organized to do that.
Can you both talk about your research interests?
Okay, so I guess I'll start. So, I mean, there are many, and this is one of the characteristics of bioengineering. I'm just going to focus on one that I think, you know, you may find more interesting. So, one of the, you know, the research areas that we work on is in the development of biosensors. So, what are biosensors? So, basically, they are devices that are supposed to be used for detecting and measuring different analytes, different chemical compounds, different properties in biological systems. So we basically use proteins to make these biosensors, and we try to create new biosensors that enable biomedical research. So the idea is that we can actually develop the systems that can basically make measurements in real time inside living cells and with a very high resolution. And the idea of this type of technologies that will allow research in the cell biology, biomedicine, and so on, that is much more quantitative and much more detailed. And so that's one of the big areas that we work on. And by the way, we do this by combining protein engineering, biochemistry, computational methods. We do a lot of spectroscopy as well. So we do imaging using confocal microscopes and things like that.
Yes, in my case, so we have sort of two ways of looking at things. One is trying to understand how biomolecules work. We also work with proteins from the understanding their function, their structure, their dynamics, and learn from all this information to create and engineer new proteins that have different applications. We have several projects that are related to the engineering biologics, which are proteins that we build basically in order to have specific functions that are going to be related to health and disease. And we also have some projects that are related to using proteins and their capability to self-assemble as biomaterials. In general, we combine general biochemistry and biophysics, protein engineering. We use different techniques for the characterization of the engineered proteins, even techniques that are giving us information at atomic resolution, such as nuclear magnetic resonance. We also characterize the structure of the assemblies using transmission electron microscopy. And we study how these proteins form assemblies with themselves and other proteins, and visualize this directly using optical tweezers and confocal microscopy. And in general, a variety of techniques that would allow kinetics of the assemblies, etc.
Thank you again. So this question, we're starting with Dr. Munoz. Could you talk about some challenges you face or might be facing in your career?
Okay, so I guess that could be a very long answer. I'll try to focus on something. So, you know, obviously typical challenges are, you know, that everybody in the academic world face. are, you know, keeping up with the field, making sure that you understand and know everything that's going on, because one of the key, you know, requirements to actually do research is that it's new and builds upon what is there. It's very difficult to do that unless you keep up with everything else that everybody's doing. So there is a lot of reading, a lot of research on everybody else's research. You know, that sometimes is challenging, especially nowadays. The fields are growing so much. There is so many people doing research anywhere in the world. There are so many publications that sometimes is difficult, but it's very, very important. You don't want to spend 2 or 3 years working on something and then realize that somebody else has done it before you. So that's one challenge I can think of. And another challenge, obviously, is you know, moving around so much around the world, like I've done in my career. I think it is very nice because you get to experience many different environments and you get to have an impact on many different people, different corners of the world. It's also a challenge because every place has their own ways of doing things, their own strengths, their own weaknesses. You know, you have to learn all of this anew. As you grow older, it gets harder because you tend to, you know, expect that things work the way you're familiar with. So I think it's very, very, you know, it's an invigorating feeling, but at the same time, sometimes can be overwhelming, you know, having to adjust to so many different things. So that's kind of from a personal point of view. And, you know, obviously, there are lots of challenges that come every day. You know, just realize that we are working at the forefront of innovation. So, you know, sometimes you have to define yourself what are the boundaries and what is real and what is not, and what kind of controls you need to make sure that what you're doing is correct. And sometimes, I mean, this is a very high bar that we had to self-impose ourselves, and you know that requires discipline and requires you know, searching, constant interrogation of what you're doing, making sure that what you're doing is correct and it's appropriate. And I think that's, again, very invigorating, but at the same time, depending on the day, whether you get a couple of bad results in a row or something like this, it becomes, you know, challenging as well, because nobody likes to have negative results one after the other, but that's a little bit part of research, right? When you're innovating, you know, the normal result is that things don't work. Because if you already knew how they work, that means you're not really doing research. You are doing engineering, right? So when you're doing research to develop engineering processes, you know, you are basically touching a new territory, and that means there is a lot of uncertainty there.
Okay, so I think I have the perspective of a female here, and I think one of the greatest challenges that I have faced is how to combine my family life with my professional career. I have 2 children, and when they were younger, particularly, it has been tremendously difficult, very difficult to be able to dedicate as much time as it is needed for advancement in research, and also be able to be a good mom. So for me, this is what has been more difficult. And it has reached the level that I had to sometimes almost come to full stop in terms of the research, to be able to do both things, or at least to be able to, you know, take care of my children. And I think this perhaps it's a common challenge that lots of families are facing. I don't know how these days, probably things have progressed differently, and there's more help, etc. Nowadays. But if I look back, this is definitely one of the biggest challenges that I had to face. And also I think that there is some kind of, in some places, implicit bias towards females in general. It's a thing that happens in society. We're working hard to get rid of it, but it's still you can still feel it and you can still suffer from it. So, it makes me happy, for example, to see, female students in my classes, in the bioengineering program or any other engineering field or scientific field. That is always like a positive thing for me, I guess, because of the challenges that I faced in the past. So I think that that is one of the most difficult things that people who are in academia, even whether they're female or male, they have to face, how to deal with both the professional life and the family life.
Thank you. We do have a question. If students need help in your courses and they have questions, how should they prepare to attend office hours? We have Professor Munoz.
Yeah, so I guess in general, office hours are there at for the use of the students. I normally in my class, I typically ask students to warn me before that they want to come over for student office hours, because that way I can make sure that I don't have too many at the same time, because each one of you will come with a completely different problem. Sometimes it's the same, but many times it's different. Sometimes students benefit from hearing the issues that others have, but other times it's basically too much. So I try to coordinate it in ways that I can be as more one-on-one as possible. That is not always possible, and sometimes actually makes sense to actually do it in groups. So the other thing that we try to do is we have these discussion sessions every week in my class, in which basically the idea is that the students can pose any questions. We bring up questions as well, issues that, points of discussion, but at the same time, we open the floor for students asking. And that way there is much more of an exchange. So every student can participate, can listen, can basically answer. And also I try to run those with a teaching assistant, having the teaching assistant doing it, because in my experience, students feel much more comfortable talking to another young person that was a student like them, a few years before, than to a professor. For some reason, there is a little bit of a barrier, probably because, we're big professors or whatever. So in my experience, that contact is very helpful, because students can feel more in contact, personal contact with the TA. And then the TA can inform me what are the really sticking points, so that I can actually go and revisit them during lecture. And I see there is something that wasn't clear because several people have a problem. Or at the same time, I can also find out a student that is really struggling, and then try to contact them to try to come up with a plan to make it work.
So in my case, at even the first day of class, the first class, I would comment about the syllabus and practical things, the name of the TA, how to contact the TA, how to contact me, the office hours, etc. And I agree with Professor Munoz. It's very difficult to have office hours that would satisfy the schedule of all the students. So typically these are fixed at a certain time, but I always find that there are some students who cannot make it for different reasons. So I try to either modify the office hours to accommodate these students, or add not that many, because we truly cannot have many office hours, because otherwise we will not be able to fulfill other responsibilities that we have. But at least try to add one additional hour for one or two students who really are combining their studies with work and cannot really make it. I have the experience that students typically prefer to join in groups in the office hours, because they are exposed to the doubts from other students, and they find that this is useful for them, even if they think, that they understand whatever concepts, etc. They might get additional information from the doubts from other students. So typically I have several of them in the office. I always leave my door open. I'm talking pre-COVID-19. So there is not a barrier for the student, and they just show when the office hours is, you know, when the office hours are, and they just show their, I think that's like, you know, having the door open is sort of like an invitation for them to not be shy and find, I guess, you know, the courage if needed to get in the office and ask questions, etc. In my course, we also have discussion sections. So yes, I agree with Professor Muñoz that some students prefer to be in contact with the TA, but there are other students who are not satisfied with the answers from the TA. They prefer to go to the professor. So there's a little bit of both. And I think that would be my contribution to this question.
Perfect. Thank you. And for time, there is just one more question. And it's, what advice would you give second year students going into their second year?
Okay, so I think basically pretty much everything we've been talking about from that point of view. Second year is the year in which you're finishing all the requirements that you require, you know, obviously you're required to do in order to get into your major, and you will be done with most of the kind of general, you know, science and engineering requirements, and you will be starting to get into the real thing, basically the courses that are more related to your major. And therefore, what I think you should do in this case is, again, explore as much as possible, try to enjoy, and try to also start identifying what areas of the field, you know, your major are more interesting to you. And they all, you know, the way to do this is by looking at the different courses that you will have. Of course, the experience that one has as a student is very determined by the instructor. So you can also look a little beyond, try to talk to faculty already. It's, you know, after the second year is a very good time to start looking for a research opportunity, because you have already been around for a while, you are already on the right track, and at the same time, you still have time to actually do something, you like it, that is more extensive, right? So you get into a research position with a faculty in the beginning of the third year, you will have an opportunity to get a very nice training if you enjoy it for 1.5 or so. And that will be a magnificent opportunity to actually, you know, get a job later in related areas. As I say, considering that you're looking for a research and development type of position.
So I think the advice would be from my end to like hang in there, basically. After the end of this year is, like Professor Muñoz said, is when they're going to be in contact with more specialized subjects. I think that for students, this is probably very exciting and even motivational. It could provide a lot of motivation to keep working and keep looking into that goal at the end, which is getting your degree. You know? And I think perhaps the students in this second year might be kind of, those I guess that are struggling might be thinking, okay, is this what I really want to do? Am I good enough for this? Should I continue? Should I drop this and go to some other program, some other major, etc.? The risk could be there. And I think that it's important to not forget the overall picture that there are a lot of resources at UC Merced to help students succeed. And sometimes it's important to keep trying and think about this final goal. If this is what you really want to do, like persevering and keep trying and keep working. Nobody says you have to do, I mean, it's better to do things in the 4 years, the 4 years that, you know, the program is supposed to be done, but it's not that important if it takes a little bit more, longer than that. You know, I have had students in my classes and in my lab who they needed a longer time because of different reasons. And it's just a question of, you know, being persistent and keep working and not losing this, you know, the sight of that goal and that objective that we all have for students to get their degree and get the training and the knowledge that they need, and for us to help them succeed.
Well, thank you both so much for sharing knowledge and sharing so much good advice. As mentioned before, this will be posted on our engineering advising website. So if you want to go back and see it again, you can